I think reading is very important to children, and it was to me, because it's a time when your imagination is expanding at a geometric rate, and I think that reading books is a way of escaping into your own head and starting to formulate imagery and interpret things, and for me it was very much like that. Last year I did a workshop on Stig of the Dump, and that was a book that really fired my imagination as a kid, because it's such an evocative story of a young boy who's sort of befriends a caveman, and books like that were kind of about kids out on their own doing stuff were always really inspiring, because you know it's an exciting thing to think about. And a lot of children's fiction, when you think about it, from Jungle Book to Harry Potter, are often about sort of either children that are away from their parents, or have been abandoned by their parents, or have lost their parents. And it's very telling, I think, because it's to children, reading is a very sort of I wouldn't say solitary, because that sounds negative, but it's a very personal thing. It's a time when they're with themselves and only themselves, in their own heads, and it's incredibly important, I think, for children to read and to expand their imaginations, and you know, that type of thing.
The importance of books for a teenager is that they give you a sense of adventure, they give you a sense of escape, and they let you work out who you want to be and who you are, which is incredibly important when you don't have really anyone else to turn to at that age. When I was a child, reading gave me magic. It gave me ability to escape, it gave me ability to be somewhere completely else and someone else, and experience things that I would never be able to experience as a human being sometimes. So for me, they were irreplaceable. This is the second year that I've been involved in the Hertford Children's Book Festival, and I'm so proud as a local author to be able to come back to the place where I grew up and really kind of encourage children to read and really enjoy literature the way that I do.
When I was a child, books meant everything to me. I was quite often poorly when I was about 7 years old. I was in hospital for quite a long time, and I spent all my time sitting in bed with millions of books. And it meant that even though I was very weak, I didn't really get out of bed for quite a long time, I was actually escaping off into imaginary worlds, into wondrous places through the power of books. So it's a wonderful thing to be able to share that kind of love with kids today. The wonderful thing about stories is that they inspire you, and for me and for many other people, they inspire you to write. And my advice for kids who want to write is to just have no fear. Sit down with a pen and paper or on the computer and just go for it. You can experiment, you can have fun. Doesn't matter if it doesn't work, that's part of the excitement. Just go for it, write stuff down, and you will soon see new worlds appearing before your eyes.
What reading gave to me as a child was really a huge world that I wouldn't have had otherwise. Not forgetting that it was the days before computers and before very much television. I really needed books to escape into. And I was lucky that I had quite a lot. I was given a lot of books by my grandmother, but also we had a really fantastic library that I was taken to every week. My favourites were things like Madeline, and I used to read Mary Plain and Mrs. Pepper Pot, and I wish I'd had Roald Dahl in those days, but that was before my time, no, after my time. But I wouldn't have survived without books, because there was absolutely nothing else to do, and I loved them.
What are the perfect ingredients for a children's book? I think that it's impossible to have just one formula that works, because all children are different, they're all individuals. I think you need variety. I think for myself, most of my books are based on memories of things that I remember from when I was a child, but also visiting schools and working with children, seeing what inspires them. And I think it's a whole mixture of ingredients. It's like a cake. You have to have the right ingredients in a story, so you have to mix things up a bit, I think. I think children's book festivals are really important, because nowadays in this digital world, children don't necessarily come to books as often as one would like. And I think they need to be reminded just how magical and wonderful books are. There are always going to be children who struggle, who find learning to read difficult. So I think it's important to inspire those children. And also from the visual side of things, I think it's important for them to see illustrations and meet illustrators and know that art and image are also part of books as much as word. My way into books as a child was through the pictures. So that's a message that I really want to get across to as many children as possible, to enjoy the pictures as well as the words. They go together.
I think the perfect ingredients for a children's story are humour. I think kids love to laugh, and I think it's a way, certainly for me, I was a terrible reader and writer when I was little, so, and that's how I got hooked on books. I realised that books were funny, which is very, very good, and also a little bit of wickedness. I think you have to go to your extremes with children's books, which is why Roald Dahl is such a master of children's stories. So rather than having, you know, a slightly mean headmistress, he has a headmistress that swings little girls round by their pigtails. So yes, I think humour and a little bit of naughtiness is always good.
My favourite bit was when Stephen told us the stories about tricking his mum. My favourite thing was when he said all the funny different words. I liked it when he told all the jokes he played on his mum and all the funny things.
I think it's really important to inspire reluctant readers, because I firstly was a really reluctant reader. I found it terrifically difficult, and the ways that I became a fan of reading was both humour, so funny books, as I said before, and also comic books. I mean, it helps that, you know, I write Dennis the Menace, which comes from a comic book, but when I was little, I found it far less threatening. These kind of small sentences inserted amongst pictures are a really non-threatening way to start if you're reluctant. You know, when you're handed a big book, it becomes very scary and all you see is words. So I think a really good way of starting if you are reluctant is to go for something that, yeah, just, you know, there's nothing to be ashamed about reading smaller sentences inserted amongst zany pictures. So yeah, I think comic books are very, very underrated in the world of children's literacy.
When I was little, reading was an escape for me. I couldn't wait to get away into fairy tale castles or into the woods, or just to get away from the everyday humdrum of life. And the best thing about being a reader for me was going to the library and being able to take out whatever book I liked. And take a risk on a book. I didn't have to like it. I didn't even have to finish it. If I didn't like it, I hadn't lost anything. So being able to go to the library as a child was a big part of becoming a writer for me.
I think the perfect ingredients for a children's story, having written one now, are, as an adult, you have to stay incredibly in touch with the child within yourself. I have a belief, which I think is indisputable, that adults are just, you know, grown-up children. We are all grown-up children. We have a sort of crust of adulthood that we pretend is with us, but we know that underneath it is a child. And the more that you can channel that child and think, what would I like to hear? What would the child in me like to hear? The more you can write a children's story.
Important ingredients in children's books, I think, are, well, for a start, readability. The fact that something that's going to make you want to turn the page. I think it's important not to patronise children, because while they need, you know, they need a bit of a hand and they need a bit of a help in order, you know, just to encourage them to read for a start. And, you know, no one starts to read suddenly magically at the age of 12. We naturally help them on when they're a kid, they're very young. But I think tonally, it's the same as the way when you speak to children. I personally have never really wanted to or understood overly talking down to children when I'm speaking to them. I kind of quite enjoy speaking to an 8-year-old like they're a 35-year-old. Sometimes Amanda tells me off for that because it involves swearing, but I kind of think they do respond to being talked to as sentient beings, and I think it's the same way with reading. And I think it's why I wouldn't make a very good children's author, I don't think, is that getting that balance of being not patronising, but also giving them enough good stuff to make them want to turn the page is a very difficult thing to do. It's like anything in the world. Everything in the world is easy unless you want to do it well. And then if you want to do something well, it gets a lot harder. And that's why there's only a few people who are very good at it, I guess. But as a child, I never really read children's books, to be quite honest. I never really read them. It's only since I've become a dad and reading to my children that I appreciate the great children's authors. And that's when you know when someone is really good, because you see a child just wrapped, you know, or when they start to learn to read as well, when they are really wanting to go back to a book and it's not just a penance.
The importance of books in my life when I was growing up was we didn't have the internet then. I wasn't allowed to watch much television. Television was a treat. So I would immerse myself in books, and I used to carry around books a lot when I was little. I had a stockpile of Enid Blyton and Roald Dahl, and yeah, they were just an integral part of me growing up and sort of living in a fantasy world, and I think they contributed a lot to me wanting to become an actress.
Parents sometimes say to me, oh, I'm not sure my kids should read your book because they might get nightmares. And I say that's exactly why they should read the book. That's why I wrote them. I think it's important that we don't overprotect our children and that they experience the full range of emotions, of which fear is one. And I had a lot of nightmares as a kid, and I think they made me the man I am today. You know, kids are going to have frightening things happen in their lives. And the good thing about horror is that it is a way for them to experience some of this stuff, but in a safe way, because horror is fantasy. My books are zombie books. We're not going to be attacked by zombies, but through these books, kids can learn about death and disease and change and aging and decay and all the stuff that they will have to cope with without realising that they're having any life lessons. And nightmares are good as well, because you have to learn to face your fears and learn how to deal with them.
Today I got to meet 2 authors and I got a book signed by Sally Gardner. I think reading is really important because it helps you with your vocabulary and it helps with your imagination.
Hello, my name is Tommy Kerr, and today I found the Hartford Children's Book Festival really good because I got to meet 2 authors, and especially I got to meet Sally Gardner, and I actually picked up 2 of her books today, I, Coriander and Maggot Moon.
I always think the thing to do is to start reading the story to them. And if you can't do that, or if you feel very embarrassed about your own skills at reading, to sit with them while you listen to a tape together, and to draw, or to start making cakes, or to do some creativity that involves hands. Because for lots of children, it's impossible to take things in unless they're active, unless they're doodling, or they're playing, or they're doing something quietly, obviously not playing a drum, and listening with you, with their mummy, to the story. And both of you able to say, oh, stop now for a cup of tea. Oh no, but let's go back. And to have that conversation. And I always used to do it so it got really gripping, and then I'd go, I'm sorry, we've got to stop there now. Oh, I'm awfully sorry, we can't, have to wait. And I'd always find them reading the book. Perfect ingredients for a fairy tale. I think I really like it dark. I like a lot of humour, and I like a really rip-roaring adventure and mystery.
We had a supply teacher in when I was about 10, and she got us writing poems. But I remember Mr. Brennan got us writing some stories when I was a bit younger than that, and I used the word uncanny. And he called me out, he said, where'd you get this word from, uncanny? I said, I don't know, sir. And I think I might have actually got it from a science fiction book called Uncanny Tales, but he said, it's very good. And so that was a really important moment, him telling me that this was good writing. I think in terms of writing and performing, it's a bit like being a cobbler. There's the sole and the upper. So you do need both of them to make a shoe, in the way I do it. Not all writing needs a performer, but a lot of mine, I hope it doesn't need it, but that's the way I do it. I like to do it, I suppose, and I feel is a way of getting it across to perform it. I write on trains. I wrote this morning in the taxi that brought me here. When I was a youngster, I got a lot of pleasure out of reading. I mean, I generally think that if the stuff is good, the kids will want to read it. But I suppose a festival like this, the idea of it is well, be aware of this. You might like this.
We chose Hertford for the Hertford Children's Book Festival because it's a beautiful market town. It caters very much for families and children, and had a lot of areas that we could incorporate into the festival. So it had sort of a great library and museum, Leaf Cafe, which is like a kids sort of meeting place with a little sort of bookshop in there, Courtyard Arts, and obviously the theatre, which we used as the kind of hub for the whole thing. So we had the satellite venues and the theatre, and it's just got great facilities, and it's a nice vibey place for children to come and meet authors.
It's also got really good transport links, really, for all the home counties in the southeast, and there are quirky boutiques and nice places to eat, and it's somewhere that you can have a really good day out, plus be part of a world-class book festival.
The highlights of the book festival for me were, well, firstly dressing as a giant blue kangaroo and being cuddled by lots of 3- and 4-year-olds. That was really amazing. I loved that. It was very hot though. And secondly was the gala evening, where we had a lot of actors and sort of comedians and writers who came on and talked about their favourite children's book and read an excerpt from their favourite children's book. And it was great because there was a lot of skilled children there, and they were really, it was a really sort of, it was a really vibey, happy sort of evening, and it seemed to go really well.
A couple of my real highlights would have been David Baddiel, who was with us to launch his first ever children's book, The Parent Agency, and that was a terrific event, really, really good, and his whole family came to watch as well. And also the experience of seeing Sally Gardner really not just inspire the children, but offer them so much comfort and support if they are dyslexic or have problems reading and writing. I thought that that was utterly inspirational and very, very moving. And of course the book festival runs for a whole week, so there was a real buzz in the town, in the schools, in the local businesses. The local media were incredibly supportive, and you just really felt this is festival week. It was exhausting, but it was very, very uplifting too. You know, in this fast-moving digital age, I don't think there's ever been a more important time for children to be encouraged to read and to explore new authors and new books, whether it's on an e-book reader or a trip to the library or going and spending a birthday book token in a bookshop. And one thing I think is really important is never ever tell off your child for keeping their light on that extra half hour so that they can finish a chapter in bed at night. I think what Mo and I were really bowled over by was the enthusiasm and the support, not just from the children, but from their families, from the schools, from all our sponsors, and from the town itself. And really, the Hertford Children's Book Festival can only grow from that.
We're already gearing up with our plans for the next festival. It's going to run from the 1st to the 7th of October 2015. And there'll be lots of news on the website, which is hertfordchildrensbookfestival.co.uk. We'll be putting announcements up there and telling people how it's going, and as soon as we have people confirmed, we'll start to announce them on the website, so keep an eye out.